They laughed when she gave up her interview to help a stranger, but that stranger held the key to her entire future. The rain had come early that spring, soft at first, like a whisper against the rooftops of Atlanta's West End, then harder, relentless, drumming like distant thunder on the cracked pavement outside apartment 12C. Inside, Aaliyah Brooks stood barefoot on the faded linoleum floor, pressing the hem of her thrift store blouse beneath an old iron her mother had used since Aaliyah was a child. It was the morning of her very first job interview. She had dreamed of this day since the age of 15, when she'd seen the name Blake Financial scrolling across the ticker of a business channel on a TV through a pawn shop window. Now she was 23, armed with a community college degree, a resume typed on her mother's aging Dell computer, and a pair of shoes that had seen 5 winters but looked almost new again after last night's scrubbing. "Mom," she called softly, peeking into the bedroom. Her mother was still asleep, curled beneath a quilt of stitched memories, each patch a reminder of a life lived on pennies but never in poverty of spirit. Aaliyah hesitated. She wanted to say goodbye but didn't want to wake her. Instead, she slipped a note under the mug on the kitchen table. "Going to be great. I love you." By the time she reached the MARTA station, the rain had thickened, and the sky wore the heavy gray of uncertainty. Still, she walked with her head high. Her resume, sealed carefully in a plastic sleeve, was tucked against her chest. Her hair, tight curls brushed back into a neat bun, was already frizzing from the humidity. She didn't care. Today was the day. The platform was quiet. A few commuters stood wrapped in their own morning rituals: coffee, headphones, scrolling phones. Aaliyah stood at the edge, her eyes fixed on the silver line of tracks stretching into the city. She could see it already in her mind. The shining glass tower in Midtown, the receptionist's polite smile, the chair she'd sit in, the questions she'd answer with poise. She took a breath. "You've earned this. You belong there. You are ready." The train screeched into the station. She boarded quickly, found a seat near the window, and clutched her purse as if it might fly away with all her dreams inside. She whispered the company name to herself: Blake Financial, Blake Financial, Blake Financial. And then she smiled, because despite the rain, despite the fear, it felt like the beginning of something real. When the train pulled into Midtown, the clock read 8:34 a.m. She had 26 minutes. The rain had not let up. The sky was a curtain of mist and gray, and the sidewalks shimmered with puddles. Aaliyah stepped off the platform and into the world she longed to join. Towering buildings, polished shoes, umbrellas marching like soldiers down Peachtree Street. She was 5 blocks away when it happened. Just ahead, near the corner of 10th Street, something caught her eye. A wheel. Then a hand. It was a man. Elderly. White hair plastered to his scalp, slumped in a wheelchair that had tilted dangerously into the gutter. His right wheel was caught in a crack, and his coat was soaked through. People walked past him. One man glanced down, then looked away. Another stepped around him like he was a traffic cone. Aaliyah froze. Her watch beeped. 8:38. She had 18 minutes left. She could still make it. "Keep walking," a voice inside her said. "You've waited your whole life for this." But another voice, the one that sounded like her father, whispered something different. "No moment is too important to lose your humanity." She turned, ran back. "Sir? Are you all right?" The man lifted his face. His blue eyes were pale and clouded, and his voice was hoarse. "Wheel's stuck. Can't move it." Without hesitating, she dropped her purse, grabbed the metal arms of the chair, and heaved. Her shoes slipped. Mud splashed up her legs. She braced herself again and pushed harder, rocking the chair until the wheel popped free from the rut. Cars hissed past them in the rain. Her curls were soaked now, her blouse clinging to her spine. But she kept at it, guiding the chair out of the street and under the overhang of a bus shelter. "Thank you," the man said, coughing. "Most people don't stop." Aaliyah was breathing hard, kneeling beside him. "Well," she said, smiling through the rain, "most people forgot what it's like to be stuck." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "What's your name?" She wiped her hands on her skirt. "Aaliyah Brooks." "I'll remember that," he said. By the time she arrived at Blake Tower, it was 9:07, 7 minutes too late. The building was exactly as she'd imagined. Sleek steel edges, spotless revolving doors, marble floors. She stepped inside, dripping wet, and was met with the cool gaze of a woman in a fitted gray suit at the reception desk. Aaliyah tried to speak between breaths. I had a 9 a.m. interview. With HR. The woman's eyes scanned her quickly, hair frizzed, shoes muddy, CV damp. "I'm sorry," the receptionist said without apology. "They've moved on to the next candidate." "I helped someone. He was stuck in—" "I'm sure you did," the woman said curtly. "But punctuality is a core value here." Aaliyah looked down at her resume. Ink had bled into the paper, her name smudged. She nodded slowly. "Thank you anyway." And then, quietly, she turned and walked out into the rain. She didn't cry, not yet. Not until she turned the corner and leaned against a brick wall, letting the water soak her completely. Her chest hurt. Her hands trembled. Maybe I really did choose wrong. Maybe kindness doesn't matter anymore. Maybe I failed my mother, but still, somewhere deep inside her, was a flicker of something she couldn't explain. Not hope. Not yet. Just a quiet question. Was it worth it? And though the answer didn't come right away, she didn't regret what she'd done. Not yet. The rain hadn't let up. It swept across the wide sidewalks of Midtown like a curtain torn from the sky, stinging against Aaliyah's face as she trudged toward the MARTA station. Her clothes still clung to her skin, her shoes squished with each step. The plastic sleeve that once protected her resume had given up hours ago, and now the pages inside were bloated and blurred beyond repair. She couldn't tell her mother. Not yet. She didn't want to see the disappointment in those soft, tired eyes. Eyes that had spent years believing in a dream stitched from scraps and late-night prayers. No. Aaliyah needed time. A moment. A breath. As she stepped down the station's concrete stairs, the city buzzed around her. Horns in the distance, the slap of tires through puddles, someone shouting to hail a cab. But inside her, silence. A hollow, echoing stillness that even the rain couldn't reach. She waited on the platform for the next westbound train, arms crossed over her chest, trying not to shiver. Her soaked blouse had turned transparent in places. She pulled her coat tighter, watching the trains come and go. It was then that she noticed the shape near the far end of the platform. A lone wheelchair, tilted awkwardly, half spun against a puddle that had grown into a shallow stream. A man, elderly, maybe late 70s, struggled to turn his wheels but couldn't move. His left hand gripped the rim tightly, shaking with the effort. Aaliyah's pulse picked up. She glanced at the time, 11:42 a.m. She could still catch the 11:45 and be home by noon. Her mom would be expecting her. She hesitated. People passed the man by. Some cast him a look of vague concern before turning away. A businessman with a Bluetooth earpiece slowed just enough to see the chair. then adjusted his umbrella and kept moving. Aaliyah stepped forward, then stopped. Her mind pulled her back, reminding her of the morning, reminding her of what kindness had cost. You already paid the price for helping someone. And what did it get you? But then she remembered a different morning, a different man, her father. She had been 10. A broken-down car. Rain. Just like this. They'd been on their way to the hospital for his checkup, and he'd stopped. Not for himself, but for a woman whose grocery bags had spilled onto the street. He'd helped her gather every orange, every can of soup. They missed the appointment. But later that week, the same woman brought dinner to their apartment, and came every week after that. Kindness, her father had told her that night, is never about timing. It's about being human. Aaliyah exhaled and moved forward. "Sir?" she said gently, bending beside the wheelchair. "Do you need help?" The man looked up, rain dripping from the brim of his soaked cap. His pale blue eyes, clouded with age but alert, focused on her. "Wheels stuck," he rasped. "Caught in the grate. I can't reverse." Aaliyah crouched down, ignoring the water that seeped through her coat and into her knees. She examined the wheel. It was wedged deep into the metal drainage channel. "All right," she said softly. "I've got you." He didn't respond, just watched her with a guarded expression. She placed one hand on the cold, wet armrest and the other on the back of the chair. She pushed. Nothing. The wheel barely budged. She tried again, this time using her foot to brace against the concrete edge. The wheel inched. She tried again, face straining, breath sharp in her throat. With a groan of metal and a splash of water, the wheel finally popped free. The chair rolled back an inch. Aaliyah grabbed the handles and guided him carefully away from the puddle to the sheltered part of the platform. Her arms were trembling from the effort, her coat heavy with rain. "You okay now?" she asked, brushing wet curls from her face. The man stared at her for a long moment, breathing heavily. Then he gave a slow nod. "You didn't have to." "I know." "You're dressed for an interview," he said, eyeing her blouse, her once polished shoes. "Or were." She gave a rueful smile. "Was." He lowered his head. "And you stopped anyway?" Aaliyah shrugged, arms folded. "Would have been worse if I didn't." Silence stretched between them. Around them, the platform had emptied slightly as a train came and went. The city kept moving. "What's your name, young lady?" "Aaliyah Brooks." "Where you from?" "West End, born and raised." He smiled faintly. "Good people down there." "Hard-working people," she corrected, gently but firmly. He nodded, seeming to file that away. "Well, Miss Brooks, you've got strength." She laughed, exhausted. "Just stubborn." He looked down at his hands. "Same thing, if you ask me." Another train rumbled in. Aaliyah stood, brushing herself off. "This one's mine," she said. "You sure you'll be okay?" "I've been okay for 79 years, he replied with a tired smile. "But today, thanks to you, I was better than okay." She hesitated, then leaned down and squeezed his hand briefly. "Take care of yourself. You too, Miss Brooks. Don't stop being whatever it is that makes you you." She boarded the train, standing this time, her body swaying with the rhythm of the tracks. As the city blurred past the rain-slicked windows, she stared out, silent. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. 5 missed calls from her mother. She'd have to tell her about everything. But somehow, the ache in her chest felt lighter. Not gone, but softened. She had failed the interview. That much was true. But she hadn't failed herself. The doors of Blake Tower loomed like the gates of another world, polished steel and glass rising into the gray Atlanta sky, rain cascading in silver streaks along its reflective face. Aaliyah stood just outside, soaked to the bone. Her curls clung to her scalp. Her once crisp blouse was plastered to her frame. The soft click of her cheap heels against the stone entrance was drowned by the storm behind her. She had made it. 9 minutes late. She wiped her hands on her coat, took a breath, and pushed through the revolving door. The lobby was a cathedral of silence. Clean, white marble tiles stretched beneath her feet, and a chandelier overhead shimmered like a frozen waterfall. The hum of elevators and faint tapping of keyboards echoed across the hall. Every corner, every edge gleamed. And in the middle of it all sat the receptionist. The woman looked like she belonged here. Immaculate charcoal gray suit, platinum blonde bob tucked behind one ear, eyes the color of polished stone. She glanced up as Aaliyah approached, expression unreadable. Aaliyah offered a faint smile. "Good morning. I have a 9 a.m. interview with Human Resources." The receptionist's eyes flicked to the clock on the wall. 9:07. Her gaze lowered to Aaliyah's face, then traveled down, pausing at the water stains on her sleeves, the smeared ink on the papers pressed to her chest, the mud-splashed hem of her skirt. "I'm sorry," the woman said crisply, "but you've missed your slot. Interviews are conducted on a strict schedule." "I understand," Aaliyah replied quickly. "There was an emergency on the way here. We appreciate your interest," the woman cut in, her fingers already poised over the keyboard. "Unfortunately, we've already moved on to the next candidate." "But I was supposed to meet with—" "I'm sure you were," she said, not unkindly, but with the finality of a locked door. Aaliyah stood there, dripping quietly onto the pristine floor. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her resume, once perfect, now a soggy blur of ink and effort. She laid it gently on the counter. The receptionist didn't look down. "I know I look—" Aaliyah began, then stopped herself. Her voice cracked. "I promise. I prepared. I really did." The woman's expression didn't change. "I'm sorry," she said again, as if repeating it made it real. "You can apply online in 6 months." Aaliyah nodded slowly. Her body moved before her mind could process the words. She turned, walked back toward the revolving doors, and stepped out into the rain again. Outside, the storm had softened into a gentle drizzle, but inside her, it thundered. She crossed the street blindly, shoes squishing, people rushing past her with umbrellas. She reached the corner of Peachtree and 10th and stopped, leaning against the rough brick of a vacant building, eyes closed, breath shallow. That's when the tears came. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet streams tracing the curve of her cheeks, no different from the rain still clinging to her skin. You gave up everything to help someone, and it cost you the very thing you've been chasing for years. She pulled the soggy papers from her bag, flipped through the pages she had worked on for days, bullet points that had once made her proud. Leadership roles at the community center, financial models she built for her cousin's food truck, volunteer hours at the West End Public Library. Now they were ink smears and soft corners. She laughed. A dry, humorless sound. Maybe the receptionist was right. Maybe people like her weren't supposed to be here. A black girl from the West End in a water-stained Goodwill coat, with no Ivy League pedigree or silk-lined name. What was she even thinking? She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. 1 bar. 4 missed messages from Mom. How did it go? Call me after. I'm making your favorite lunch. You made me proud just by trying, baby. Aaliyah clenched her jaw. She couldn't call her. Not like this. She slid down the wall and sat on the cold, wet pavement, hugging her knees to her chest. A group of interns passed nearby, laughing. One girl held a leather portfolio and a Starbucks cup. Another adjusted her heels and said, I think he liked me. I could tell by the way he smiled. They didn't even glance at Aaliyah. She didn't know how long she sat there, 10 minutes, maybe more, until a hand reached down, holding an umbrella. Aaliyah looked up. A security guard, middle-aged, black. His eyes were kind. You okay, ma'am? She nodded, forcing a smile. Yes, just waiting out the rain. He hesitated, then crouched beside her, shielding both of them with the umbrella. You were here for an interview? Yeah. Did they see you? Not really. He was quiet for a moment. That happens more than it should. Aaliyah looked at him. You work here long? 15 years, he said, chuckling. Seen all kinds of people walk through those doors. But the ones they miss, the ones who get dismissed for being late or wearing the wrong shoes, those are the ones I remember most. She blinked, surprised. Why? Because they're the ones who know how to keep going, no matter what. He stood, offering a hand. She took it. I've got a thermos in the booth, he said. Hot tea. You're welcome to it. She smiled, touched. Thank you, but I should head home. He nodded. You take care of yourself, miss. Aaliyah, she said softly. Well, Miss Aaliyah, don't let this place tell you what you're worth. She watched him walk away, umbrella bobbing, the back of his jacket printed with the word security. For the first time that morning, she smiled. It was small, but real. Back on the train, Aaliyah sat with her forehead against the window. The world blurred past. Wet asphalt, neon signs, children holding hands with mothers in plastic ponchos. She thought of the receptionist's eyes, of the man in the wheelchair, of her mother's messages. She thought of her father's voice. A girl with a spine and a heart will always outlast the world that doubts her. As the train pulled into West End Station, she sat up straighter. She wasn't done, not yet. The rain had stopped by the time Aaliyah reached her block in West End, but the street still shimmered with puddles like forgotten dreams scattered across cracked concrete. A tired sun peeked through gray clouds, lighting the familiar red brick buildings and rusted fences like an old photograph yellowed with time. Her shoes squished with every step up the front porch of apartment 12C. She paused at the door, her hand hovering over the knob. Inside, her mother would be waiting, probably humming in the kitchen, probably setting the table with mismatched plates and a pot of something warm on the stove. Probably excited. Aaliyah couldn't face that yet, not with her hair limp, her blouse damp, her dreams crushed beneath the shiny tiles of a midtown lobby. So instead, she sat. There was a chipped patch of wall on the far end of the porch, the bricks exposed and crumbling slightly. The spot her father used to lean against with his arms crossed, gazing out at the street as if watching over a kingdom of mailboxes and laundry lines. Aaliyah sat with her back against that very wall now, folding her knees into her chest. The sun warmed her face just enough to remind her how cold she'd been. Her phone buzzed again. 7 unread messages from her mother, 2 missed calls. She unlocked it, hands trembling slightly. She opened the last message. "I've got your favorite soup on. You must have nailed it. I just know it." Aaliyah closed her eyes. Her mother didn't know about the receptionist, didn't know about the interview she never got to attend, didn't know about the soaked resume and the cold looks and the way Aaliyah had sat in the rain trying to pretend it hadn't broken something inside her. For a brief moment, she considered deleting every draft of her resume, throwing her heels in the trash, and crawling into bed until the world forgot she tried at all. But the wall behind her held her up. The same wall her father leaned on during hard days. The same wall her mother painted every spring, no matter how many cracks returned. Aaliyah leaned into it like it might carry the weight she couldn't hold anymore. Then, the phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. She hesitated. Her heart skipped. Scam call? Job rejection? Wrong number? Still, she answered. "Hello?" A pause, then a calm, measured voice. "Is this Miss Aaliyah Brooks?" "Yes." "This is Natalie Carter. I'm the executive assistant to Mr. Thomas Blake." Aaliyah sat upright. "The CEO of Blake Financial?" "Yes," the voice confirmed, with that practiced efficiency only high-level assistants seem to have. "Mr. Blake asked me to reach out to you personally. He would like to meet with you tomorrow, privately." Aaliyah's breath caught in her throat. I don't understand. I wasn't interviewed today. They sent me away." "I understand. Mr. Blake is aware. He still wishes to meet with you." 9 a.m., same building. You'll be met at the front by me. Do you accept?" She blinked, mouth suddenly dry. Yes. Yes, of course. Thank you." "Wonderful. Have a good evening, Miss Brooks." The call ended. Aaliyah stared at her phone as if it might evaporate. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Did that just happen? Thomas Blake, the man whose name was etched into the glass of every skyscraper downtown, whose face appeared on the covers of Forbes and Business Weekly, wanted to meet her? Not because of a resume, not because of her college, but because he knew she was the girl who had shown up soaked and late, and still mattered to someone. She stood, legs unsteady, and opened the door to the apartment. Inside, the aroma of cornbread and lentil soup wrapped around her like a blanket. Her mother stood at the stove, her back to the door, humming softly to the old Motown radio perched on the counter. Aaliyah hesitated, and then quietly, "Hi, Mama." Her mother turned around, smiling before even seeing her face. "There she is, my little world changer. How'd it go? You hungry?" Aaliyah dropped her purse, crossed the room, and wrapped her arms around her mother tightly. She didn't say a word, just rested her chin on her mother's shoulder, letting the warmth fill all the places the rain had left hollow. Her mother froze for a moment, then hugged her back, rubbing gentle circles on her back like she had when Aaliyah was a child. "You okay?" she whispered. "I think so," Aaliyah murmured. "Something strange happened." She pulled back, looked into her mother's soft brown eyes, and smiled, small but certain. "I have a meeting tomorrow with someone unexpected." That night, Aaliyah didn't sleep much. She sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, reconstructing her resume, rewriting it from scratch. Each bullet point was deliberate, each phrase measured. She used everything she had: experience from tutoring neighborhood kids, balancing her family's finances, organizing charity events at church. She wasn't going to pretend to be someone else anymore. She was going to show up as herself. At 1:17 a.m., her mother padded in wearing a robe and slippers, hair in rollers. "Still up? I have to be ready, Mama." Her mother walked over, placed a warm hand on Aaliyah's shoulder. "Baby, you were born ready. Don't let those tall buildings make you forget what you already carry." Aaliyah smiled. I need them to see it." Her mother knelt beside her, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a small box. Inside was a delicate silver pin, her grandmother's. A single pearl at the center, edges carved into the shape of a rose. She wore this to every important moment, her mother said. Job interviews, weddings, courtrooms, even funerals. Said it reminded her that grace can bloom anywhere. Aaliyah touched it reverently. "She'd want you to wear it," her mother said. By morning, the skies over Atlanta had cleared. The city stretched wide and gleaming under sunlight as Aaliyah stepped off the train at Midtown Station once more. But this time, she felt different. She wasn't chasing something anymore. She was answering a call. She adjusted the pearl pin on her lapel and walked toward Blake Tower. Not afraid, not uncertain, but grounded in something stronger than confidence. Conviction. The morning light refracted off the glass exterior of Blake Tower like a cathedral of possibility. Aaliyah stood at its base once again, same building, same city, but this time the girl looking up wasn't the same. Her blouse was crisp white, sleeves neatly ironed. Her black slacks hugged her frame modestly. Her curls were pulled back into a high, confident puff. And pinned to her lapel, shining in the sun, was a single pearl rose, her grandmother's. She inhaled deeply. You were invited this time, not dismissed. Walk like you belong, because you do. As she entered the revolving doors, the cold hum of the lobby greeted her again. But something had changed. This time, someone was waiting. A tall woman in a tailored navy blazer approached her with a warm smile and a digital tablet in hand. "Aaliyah Brooks?" the woman asked. "Yes. I'm Natalie Carter, Mr. Blake's assistant. He's expecting you." The receptionist from 2 days ago glanced up, recognition flickering, then quickly masked. But Aaliyah didn't flinch this time. She smiled politely and followed Natalie. "Mr. Blake prefers to conduct certain meetings on the 61st floor," Natalie explained as they entered the private elevator. "It's not usually open to staff, reserved for board-level strategy meetings or personal guests." Aaliyah glanced at her reflection in the polished chrome of the elevator door. Her pulse quickened. The ride was silent but swift. With a soft chime, the elevator doors slid open to a space unlike anything she'd ever seen. The 61st floor was made entirely of glass. Walls, ceiling beams, even the office door were transparent, giving the illusion that the floor floated among the clouds. The city of Atlanta stretched infinitely below and around them, highways like veins, buildings like chess pieces, sky like silk. Sunlight poured in, casting the room in soft gold. At the far end, in front of a glass desk with no computer, sat the man himself, Thomas Blake. He was older than she imagined. His snow-white hair was neatly combed back, his posture straight despite the wheelchair. A navy vest sat crisply over a white shirt, and his eyes, icy blue, intelligent, lit up when he saw her. "Aaliyah Brooks," he said. "Right on time." She stepped forward, unsure if she should offer her hand. Instead, she nodded, steady and respectful. "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Blake." He gestured toward the chair across from him. "Have a seat." She lowered herself, legs crossed at the ankle, back straight. The pearl pin on her chest caught the light. Thomas studied her for a moment, then, "You didn't make it to your interview." Aaliyah swallowed. "No, sir. I was delayed. Helping someone." "I know," he said quietly. "You helped me." Her breath caught. I didn't recognize you," she said quickly. "I didn't know." "I didn't expect you to," he replied. "That's the point, isn't it? You didn't stop because I was Thomas Blake. You stopped because I was a man in trouble." He leaned back slightly, voice soft but steady. "Most people kept walking. I watched them. Dozens. Some in suits far more expensive than mine. Some with Ivy League degrees and curated smiles. But you were the only one who looked me in the eye and knelt down." She said nothing. Her hands folded tightly in her lap. Thomas gestured toward the skyline behind him. "I built this company from nothing, Miss Brooks. But I didn't build it alone. I built it with people who believed in things others overlooked, values that don't always show up on a resume." He turned back to her. "That's why I asked you here. I don't want a second interview, I want a conversation." She blinked. "A conversation?" "Yes," he said. "Because I have a proposal." Thomas reached for a folder on the glass table and slid it toward her. Aaliyah opened it. Inside was a packet titled Executive Shadow Program, Spring Cohort Proposal. She looked up, confused. "I'm not Ivy League. I didn't even go to a university." "I know. I've never worked in finance." "I know. I didn't even get past the front desk 2 days ago." Thomas smiled. "Exactly." She stared. "I designed this program to create future executives from within," he continued. "But somewhere along the line, it got twisted, turned into a pipeline for polished clones. What I need now is something else. Someone else." He leaned forward, voice gentler now. "I need someone who challenges the culture we've let grow here. Someone who walks through the lobby soaked and late but still chooses compassion over self-interest. Someone who knows what it's like to be overlooked and still shows up with grace." Her throat tightened. "Are you offering me a job?" "No," he said. "I'm offering you a beginning." Silence settled like snow. Aaliyah stared at the papers, at her name freshly printed on the proposal's front page. Executive Shadow. It sounded like something reserved for boardrooms and back-channel meetings, not for a girl from West End with thrifted heels and a heart that cracked too easily. She looked up. "Why me?" Thomas tilted his head. "Because I used to be you." She blinked. "I grew up with polio," he said. "Single mother. We lived in a trailer park outside of Athens. I used to sit in this very chair and watch men walk past me because I was in a wheelchair, because I looked poor, because I wasn't what success was supposed to look like." His voice trembled, just briefly. "One day, someone gave me a shot. No questions asked. Just belief. And it changed everything." He met her gaze. "Now it's my turn." She didn't know when the tears came, but they did. Quiet, dignified, like spring rain on glass. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," Thomas said. "But scared people change the world all the time. It's the arrogant ones you need to watch." Aaliyah laughed softly, wiping her eyes. "All right," she said. "I'll do it." Thomas extended his hand across the table. She took it. It was firm, steady, warm. As Natalie led her back to the elevator, Aaliyah looked once more at the shimmering skyline through the glass walls. This city had never felt so wide, so reachable. In the elevator, Natalie handed her a folder. Your schedule for the week. Orientation starts Monday, and this, she handed Aaliyah a sleek ID card with her photo and the words Executive Shadow, Aaliyah Brooks, will get you into places most people spend years trying to reach. Aaliyah clutched it to her chest. Thank you, she whispered. Natalie smiled. You earned it, whether you believe it yet or not. As the doors closed and the elevator descended, Aaliyah saw her own reflection in the mirrored walls, wet eyes, shaking hands, and a quiet, growing light behind her expression. She hadn't just been invited into the building. She had been seen. Monday morning arrived like a slow, steady breath, no longer heavy with dread, but filled with something tender and unfamiliar. Hope. The sun was already lifting itself above Atlanta's skyline as Aaliyah adjusted her grandmother's pearl pin in the hallway mirror. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, not anymore. But something about the way the pearl shimmered reminded her of everything she came from, of everyone who had gotten her this far without ever setting foot in a skyscraper. Her mother hugged her tight before she left. No words were spoken, none needed. There was pride in her silence. There was prayer in her grip. This time, Aaliyah didn't take the bus. A sleek black car with tinted windows and the Blake Financial logo etched discreetly on the side was parked in front of her building. Natalie had arranged it. The driver, a middle-aged woman named Denise with deep laugh lines and gospel playing softly from the speakers, greeted Aaliyah like an old friend. You ready to change the world today, baby girl? She asked, easing into traffic. Aaliyah laughed quietly. Let's start with changing a room. When she arrived at the tower, the security guards nodded at her with recognition. Morning, Miss Brooks, one said. She blinked. Miss Brooks. Inside the elevator, her badge unlocked a new button. 61. But today she wasn't going to the top. Not yet. She was meeting the other executive shadow candidates in room 22B, a glass-walled training space on the 22nd floor. When the elevator opened, she stepped into a corridor filled with energy and tension, voices murmuring, heels clicking, the unmistakable air of competition cloaked in business casual. Inside room 22B, 5 young professionals stood around a conference table. All wore tailored blazers. All had resumes that likely sparkled with names like Stanford, Harvard, Columbia. Their skin tones varied. Their shoes didn't. When Aaliyah stepped in, a hush fell. A boy with shellacked hair and tortoiseshell glasses gave her a once-over and turned back to his phone. A woman with high cheekbones and a Yale tote shifted her eyes from Aaliyah's shoes to her hair to her thrifted bag. No one smiled. Natalie, standing at the front, broke the silence. Welcome, everyone, she said with her usual serene confidence. Congratulations on being selected for the Spring Executive Shadow Cohort. Over the next 3 months, you will rotate through divisions under direct mentorship from department leads, and at least once a week you'll spend time in observation with Mr. Blake himself. Murmurs. A few raised eyebrows. Natalie continued. This is not an internship. This is not a resume booster. This is a transformation initiative. We are rebuilding from the inside, and you are the roots. She paused, then looked at Aaliyah. Some of you know each other. Some of you don't. And one of you came here through a very different door. That's intentional. A flicker of discomfort swept the room. Let's start with introductions, Natalie said. Name, background, and what you believe you bring that the others don't. A boy stepped forward. Liam Tran, Wharton MBA, previously with McKinsey. I specialize in organizational efficiency. Next, Carmen Lopez, Harvard undergrad, Yale Law. I was with the mayor's office for 2 years. I bring political fluency. Next, Daniel Wright, Stanford, former analyst at Deloitte. My strength is cross-border market intelligence. And so on. Then it was Aaliyah's turn. She stood, straightened her back, and looked around the room. Aaliyah Brooks, West End Atlanta, community college. Worked as a library assistant, church treasurer, and freelance math tutor. A pause. I bring something no one else here has. Proximity. They blinked. She continued, voice steady. I've lived with the people most corporations overlook. I've stood in line at underfunded clinics. I've taught kids who don't know if they'll eat dinner. I've watched neighbors choose medicine over rent. I know what it costs to be invisible. Silence. Natalie smiled, just slightly. Thank you, Aaliyah. The first week was a whirlwind. Monday, finance. Tuesday, strategic planning. Wednesday, diversity and culture audit. Thursday, compliance and legal. Each morning brought a new team, a new leader, a new mountain to climb. Aaliyah took notes furiously, asked questions others thought too naive to ask, and stayed after hours just to understand a single line of balance sheet. But it wasn't easy. At lunch, the others sat together, talking IPOs and family wealth management. When Aaliyah approached, they would pause, just long enough to remind her she was not one of them. On Thursday afternoon, it all came to a head. They were tasked with reviewing the Atlanta Municipal Bond Report, a 400-page file packed with jargon and projections. The group had to present a strategic recommendation by Friday morning. Aaliyah volunteered to build the presentation deck. Daniel sneered. Do you even know what a bond yield curve is? She froze. Carmen added, maybe we should handle the analysis, and you can work on the visuals? Aaliyah's cheeks burned. I can do both. They looked at her. No one responded. That night she worked until 2 a.m. at her kitchen table. She read every page of the report, Googled every unfamiliar term, cross-referenced with city budget records. By morning her eyes were red, but the deck was airtight. Friday morning. The team stood before a small internal board, directors of finance, legal, and social impact. The room was tense. Daniel opened. Carmen spoke next. Then it was Aaliyah's turn. She walked to the screen, heart pounding. Municipal bonds aren't just numbers, she began. They're stories. They're streetlights staying on. They're community centers reopening. They're life jackets for neighborhoods sinking in disinvestment. The room was quiet. She flipped to a slide she'd built herself, an overlay of income disparity against bond allocation. These projections ignore the zip codes that need this most. I propose we weight the impact not just by return, but by human effect. Because if we fund sidewalks and not shelters, we miss the point entirely. A pause. Then Thomas Blake's voice came from the back of the room. I agree. Heads turned. He'd been sitting quietly the whole time in the corner, unseen. He wheeled forward slowly. Miss Brooks, can you meet me upstairs in 15 minutes? Yes, sir. The others watched in stunned silence. Back on the 61st floor, Aaliyah stepped into the glass room with a nervous but steady gait. Thomas gestured toward the chair. Do you know why I asked you to speak last today? No, sir. Because I knew you'd see what the others missed. He leaned back. They saw bonds. You saw people. She said nothing, but something shifted in her shoulders. You're not here by accident, Aaliyah. I didn't bring you in to catch up to them. I brought you in to show them what they forgot. Her chest rose and fell. Thank you, she whispered. No, he said. Thank you. For the first time since joining the Executive Shadow Program, Aaliyah walked into room 22B without lowering her eyes. Something had shifted. It wasn't confidence, not the polished kind the others wore like cologne, but a deeper knowing, a quiet refusal to apologize for existing. After her presentation on municipal bonds and the unexpected endorsement from Thomas Blake himself, no one could pretend she didn't belong. But the air hadn't warmed completely. That Monday morning, as she entered the meeting room, Carmen looked up briefly, offered a clipped nod, then turned away. Daniel still hadn't said a word to her since Friday. Liam, with his pressed collar and polished demeanor, studied her the way some people study chessboards, calculating, impersonal. Fine, she thought. Let them take their time. She took her usual seat near the end of the table, opened her laptop, and began reviewing the brief for that week's assignment, presenting a strategic expansion plan for Blake Financial's philanthropic arm into underserved school districts. Aaliyah read the first paragraph and felt a knot form in her stomach. It wasn't just numbers. It wasn't just charts. It was kids. Kids like her. Kids like her cousins, her neighbors, her Sunday school students who had to share textbooks or wait in lines at public libraries just to print homework. This wasn't strategy. This was personal. Later that afternoon, the cohort was ushered into the 30th floor conference center. An expansive room framed by floor-to-ceiling windows, sunlight falling in golden sheets across the mahogany table. Department heads and directors filled the front rows. Thomas Blake wasn't present this time, but his name was stamped across the presentation agenda. Each shadow would take the floor for 5 minutes, followed by questions. The order was randomized. Aaliyah drew the final slot. Daniel went first, speaking in smooth bullet points. He quoted case studies from Boston and Chicago. Carmen followed, highlighting her policy experience with the mayor's office. Liam proposed a data-driven model based on real-time student tracking. They were good, polished, impressive. Then it was Aaliyah's turn. She stood and walked to the front of the room, holding a single printed page. No PowerPoint, no graphics, just her voice. My name is Aaliyah Brooks, she began. I come from the West End neighborhood here in Atlanta. I'm not going to start with statistics or national averages. I'm going to start with Marcus. Some in the room shifted in their seats. Marcus is 10 years old. He lives 2 blocks from me. His mother works 2 jobs, and his school library hasn't had a new book since 2009. He walks past boarded-up buildings to get to class. He wants to be a civil engineer. He doesn't know what that is yet. But he wants to build stuff people can walk on safely. A few people chuckled softly, genuinely. I'm not here to talk about market gaps. I'm here to ask, what kind of future are we building if kids like Marcus aren't part of it? Silence. I propose we partner not just with school districts, but with communities, local churches, neighborhood nonprofits, after-school programs already trusted by the people we claim we want to help. She folded the paper and placed it on the table. You don't need a think tank to find the need. You just need to walk 4 blocks past the edge of your comfort zone. Then she looked up, eyes steady, unflinching. And you need to stop assuming that poor communities are broken. What they lack in funding, they make up for in resilience. That's the kind of capital we haven't learned how to measure, but we should. She stepped back. A beat, then applause. Sparse at first, then growing. Even Carmen clapped, slowly but sincerely. One director leaned forward. Miss Brooks, what experience do you have implementing community partnerships like this? I organized a back-to-school drive for 300 students with $900 and 2 folding tables, she said without hesitation. We fed families, gave out supplies, and connected 5 kids with free tutoring. No board, no budget, just a lot of stubborn hope. Another director asked, "How would you scale that?" Aaliyah smiled. "That's what I'm here to learn." After the presentations, as they exited into the hallway, Liam approached her. "Hey," he said, adjusting his glasses. "That was unexpected." Aaliyah raised an eyebrow. "Unexpected how?" "I mean, it was real," he said awkwardly. "People don't talk like that in these rooms." "Maybe they should," she replied. He looked away, embarrassed. "You're changing the bar." She smiled faintly. "Not changing it. Just reminding people it was set too low for too long." That evening, she took the train home as always. Across from her sat a mother in scrubs, holding her sleeping daughter in her arms. Aaliyah watched them for a long time, memories rippling through her, of long nights in the laundromat with her mom, of homework done under flickering street lights, of falling asleep on buses with dreams too big for her zip code. She reached into her bag, pulled out her journal, and wrote, "I no longer flinch at the sound of my name in boardrooms. I no longer shrink myself to make others comfortable. I belong here, not because I fit in, but because I show up whole." At home, her mom was waiting at the table with a cup of tea and a smile. "How'd it go today?" she asked, folding laundry with gentle hands. Aaliyah sat down beside her, eyes glowing. "Mama, I made them see." Her mother placed a shirt down and looked at her. "See what, baby?" "Me," Aaliyah whispered. And in that moment, something healed. Not all of it, but enough. It began with a letter, not an email, not a text. A real envelope, ivory stock, her name embossed on the front in delicate serif font. Inside, a formal offer from Silvergate Consulting Group, headquartered in Manhattan. "We were deeply impressed with your recent philanthropic pitch for Blake Financial," the letter read. "Your insight, conviction, and clarity of voice are rare." They offered her a position as junior strategy consultant, a 6-figure salary, relocation package, prestige beyond anything she'd ever imagined. Aaliyah stared at the letter for a long time, standing barefoot in her kitchen. The stove ticked softly behind her. Outside, traffic inched along Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard under golden evening light. She should have been thrilled. But her hand trembled as she folded the offer back into the envelope, because somehow it didn't feel like home. That night, she sat on the fire escape with her mother, each holding a mug of tea. The stars were dim, drowned by city lights, but they looked anyway. "I got another offer today," Aaliyah said quietly. Her mother turned to her, eyes gentle. "Good company?" "Big company," she corrected. "Bigger than Blake. More money, more status." Her mother sipped slowly. And it feels like running away." Silence passed between them, filled only by the soft buzz of cicadas and the hum of the street lamp below. I don't want to be afraid of wanting more, Aaliyah confessed. But I also don't want to forget who I was when I had nothing. Her mother set down her mug. You don't need to prove your worth by leaving, baby. Sometimes staying takes more courage than going. At Blake Tower the next morning, the halls buzzed with quarterly tension. Budget meetings, performance reviews, investor calls. But Aaliyah's mind wasn't in any of it. Her footsteps echoed in the glass atrium like quiet questions. Natalie met her outside Thomas Blake's office. He's expecting you. Inside, Thomas sat behind his glass desk, a single cup of black coffee steaming beside a thick stack of reports. He looked up as she entered and gestured toward the seat across from him. I hear congratulations are in order, he said. Aaliyah sat slowly. News travels fast. He chuckled. Silvergate has eyes everywhere. Impressive offer. They don't give those out like candy. She didn't respond, just stared at the skyline beyond him, heart a tangle. Thomas leaned forward. Do you want to go? I don't know, she admitted. Then you're asking the wrong question, he said. It's not about whether you can go. It's about whether you must. She looked at him. Money's good. Prestige is good. But purpose? He tapped his chest. That's the compass. A beat passed. She asked softly, Why did you stay here all these years? He smiled. Because I never wanted to be the richest man in the room. I wanted to be the one who left the door open behind him. Later that day, Aaliyah sat alone on a bench outside the building, the sun warming her knees, the offer letter folded tightly in her bag. She pulled out her phone. For a long time, she just stared at her home screen. Then, finally, opened a folder marked Dad's Voice Memos. There was only one file. She hadn't listened to it in years. Her thumb hovered over play. Then she tapped. Hey, baby girl. If you're listening to this, you're probably grown now. Probably making big decisions. I just want you to remember something. The voice was rough, warm, familiar. You don't owe the world perfection. You just owe it your best. Your kindness, your fire. And if ever you wonder where to go toward the thing that helps the most people sleep better at night. That's always been your gift. The recording ended. Tears gathered at the corner of her eyes. Not because she was lost, but because now she knew where she was going. That evening, she typed her response to Silvergate. Dear Ms. Tanaka, thank you for your generous offer. I am honored. After careful consideration, I have decided to decline. I am choosing to remain with Blake Financial and continue working on community-focused initiatives that matter deeply to me. I believe success is not just measured in titles or salaries, but in how many people rise with you. With deep gratitude, Aaliyah Brooks. She clicked send, then exhaled. The next morning, she walked into the 61st floor glass office with purpose. Thomas looked up from his desk. Well? She nodded. I turned them down. A slow smile spread across his face. Then let's build something that makes them wish they'd stayed. That afternoon, Aaliyah presented her revised strategy for community engagement, replacing buzzwords with real partnerships, suggesting long-term investment in community leadership pipelines, proposing a fund for local school innovation grants. This time, no one questioned her credentials. They just listened. And when she finished, one director said, You just gave this company its heart back. Later that week, as she walked past the lobby, the receptionist, the same woman who once turned her away, looked up from her desk. "Miss Brooks?" Aaliyah turned. The woman stood, extended a hand. "I just wanted to say, congratulations. I've never seen anyone move through this place the way you have." Aaliyah took the handshake gently. "Thank you." The woman added softly, "I was wrong about you." Aaliyah smiled. "We all misread people sometimes. What matters is what we do after." And with that, she walked toward the elevator, her place not borrowed, not given, but earned. They handed her a key. Not just any key, a matte black security fob engraved with her name, Aaliyah Brooks, Project Lead. She turned it over in her hand, the weight of it more symbolic than real. Natalie smiled as she clipped it to Aaliyah's new badge. "You're not shadowing anymore," she said. "You're leading." The words rang in her chest like church bells on a Sunday morning. By April, Blake Financial had greenlit Aaliyah's pilot initiative, the Bridge Program, a partnership between the company's philanthropic arm and 5 underserved schools across Atlanta. The goal was simple: invest directly in community infrastructure, not through grants or headlines, but through presence. Every Friday, Aaliyah and a rotating team of Blake volunteers sat with school principals, teachers, and parents. They listened. They took notes. They showed up. The headquarters' marble halls began to echo with new energy. Staffers who'd never left Midtown were now spending afternoons repainting gymnasiums, installing bookshelves, planting gardens with students. One afternoon, in the sunlit library of West End Elementary, Aaliyah watched a child name a shelf after her. Ms. Aaliyah's Corner, for dreamers who don't know where to begin. She smiled so wide, it ached. But with leadership came tension. Daniel, now her junior analyst, still bristled at taking instructions from someone he once dismissed. He rarely spoke in meetings unless prompted, and when he did, it was with clipped efficiency. One morning, while reviewing proposals, he muttered under his breath, "This isn't real strategy. This is charity with a PR gloss." Aaliyah paused. She closed her laptop gently, then looked at him. "Daniel, if by real strategy you mean spreadsheets that ignore people, then no, this isn't that. But if you mean solutions that outlast us, that's exactly what we're building." He held her gaze. Then, for the first time, nodded. Not in agreement, but in respect. Thomas Blake rarely intervened anymore. He didn't have to. He watched from the background, appearing just long enough to hand Aaliyah an old photograph of himself in a high school gym with cracked walls. "That's where I started," he said softly. "Took a long time to circle back." Aaliyah framed it and hung it in the new community conference room at Blake HQ. Beneath it, a plaque. "Remember where you came from, then build forward." In May, she stood before the board of directors for the first time. The room was intimidating. 12 men and women in suits worth more than her apartment lease, eyes sharp, time precious. She walked to the center of the room in a tailored navy dress her mother had helped her alter the night before. The pearl pin still gleamed on her lapel. She presented the quarterly report for the Bridge Program, its impact, growth, future scaling. Her voice was calm, clear. She didn't flinch when questioned. She didn't over-explain. When she finished, one board member asked, "How did you build this with such little funding?" Aaliyah smiled. I've been doing more with less my whole life. Another leaned forward. And how do we measure the return? She met his eyes. In changed minds. In young lives with options. In the quiet math of dignity. They voted unanimously to expand the program nationwide. A week later, Thomas wheeled into her office with a small velvet box. "I've only given out 5 of these in 20 years, he said, handing it to her. Inside was a pin shaped like a flame, delicate, gold, glowing. "The Blake Legacy Circle," he said. "It's not for tenure. It's for transformation." She was speechless. He placed a hand on her desk. "I used to think legacy was built through buildings. Now I think it's built through people like you." That weekend, Aaliyah walked past the place it all began, the MARTA station on 10th Street. Rain threatened again, just like that morning weeks ago. She paused under the bus shelter, staring at the spot where she'd first seen the man in the wheelchair. She whispered into the wind, "Thank you for getting stuck." She didn't notice the little girl at first, maybe 7 years old, standing nearby, shivering slightly. "Hey," Aaliyah knelt. "Where's your mom?" The girl shook her head. "I can't find her." Aaliyah took off her blazer, wrapped it around the child's shoulders, and crouched beside her on the bench. 10 minutes later, the mother appeared, frantic. The girl ran into her arms. "Thank you," the mother said, tears streaming. "I thought I'd lost her." Aaliyah only smiled. She wasn't lost. She was waiting to be found. As they left, the child looked back and waved. And in that moment, Aaliyah understood something deeper than any boardroom could teach. She wasn't building a career. She was building a bridge. The morning sky over Midtown was pale silver, as if the city itself were pausing for breath. Outside Blake Tower, the air was thick with a slow, steady rain, soft enough to be gentle, insistent enough to soak through if you stood still long enough. Aaliyah Brooks didn't rush through it. She walked. No umbrella, no blazer, just her pink linen dress, her natural curls loose for the first time in months, and her grandmother's pearl pin shining quietly over her heart. It had been a year since the day she walked into that same building, drenched and shaking, clutching a resume no one had read. Today, she walked in as one of the most respected voices in the company. But this morning, she didn't take the elevator. Instead, she stepped outside and circled the block, drawn by a feeling she couldn't quite name. And that's when she saw her. The little girl stood by the crosswalk, hair in messy ponytails, hugging a doll made from mismatched fabrics. She wore a backpack bigger than her torso and sneakers that had seen more playgrounds than pavement. Rain streamed down her cheeks, though she didn't cry. She was looking around, searching. Aaliyah knelt beside her. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "are you lost?" The girl looked up with wide brown eyes. "I can't find my mommy." Aaliyah opened her arms, and the girl stepped in without hesitation, pressing her wet face into Aaliyah's shoulder. "I got off the bus wrong," the girl whispered, "and now she won't know where I went." Aaliyah held her tighter. "You're not alone," she said gently. "We'll find her together." 20 minutes later, after calling the school, the transit authority, and finally the number embroidered into the girl's backpack strap, her mother came running from the corner, tears, laughter, apologies, all blending into one. The girl turned back before leaving and asked, "Are you a teacher?" Aaliyah smiled. "No, but I believe in really smart kids." The girl nodded solemnly. You should be a teacher. You're soft but strong. And just like that, they were gone, leaving Aaliyah standing in the rain again, alone but not empty. She pulled out her phone, opened her voice notes, and whispered into it, soft but strong, from the mouth of a child. Maybe that's what I've always wanted to be. By noon, she was back in the building, on the 61st floor, the floor of beginnings. The glass office shimmered in the afternoon mist. Inside, Thomas Blake sat by the window, watching the rain. He didn't turn when she entered. He only said, I always liked the rain. Why? It reminds me I'm not in control, and it makes me grateful for shelter. She joined him at the window, 2 chairs angled toward the city. She called me strong, Aaliyah said after a while, but also soft. Thomas smiled. The strongest people are. Steel doesn't have to shout. He turned to her. You've done what I hoped. Better even. You've made us human again. Aaliyah looked down. Then why does it feel like I'm still waiting for something? Thomas nodded. Because healing leaves echoes, even when the wound is closed. They sat in silence. Then he reached into his desk and pulled out a small wooden box. I was going to wait until the anniversary dinner, he said. But you've never really waited for permission, have you? He handed it to her. Inside was a slim metal plate engraved with her name, followed by 3 words. Senior Advisor, Cultural Strategy. Aaliyah blinked. I don't know what to say. Don't, Thomas said. Just keep building. Later that evening, Aaliyah took the train home. Not the car service, not a ride share. Just the same train she'd taken her whole life. And when it pulled into West End Station, she stepped off and walked toward her apartment building. But her feet didn't stop there. They kept going, past the corner store, the old mural on the brick wall, the lot where her father used to fix bikes for neighborhood kids. She reached the community center and stood in front of it, breathing in the air of old dreams. She opened her phone, called Natalie. Hey, she said. Can we set up a meeting next week? Of course. What's the agenda? Aaliyah looked up at the faded sign over the door. I want to start something. Outside the tower. A permanent fund. For small nonprofits. Led by the people they serve. There was a pause on the other end. Then, what do you want to call it? Aaliyah didn't hesitate. The Pearl Initiative. One week later, at the company's annual legacy ceremony, Thomas Blake wheeled onto the stage for what would be his last formal address as CEO. In front of hundreds of employees, press, partners, and family members, he adjusted the mic. Legacy, he said, is not about what you keep. It's about what you give away. He turned to Aaliyah, seated in the front row. When we first met, she didn't come in through the front door. She came in through a storm. She gave up her shot at an interview to help a stranger. That stranger was me. Gasps rippled through the room. She didn't know who I was. She didn't ask. She only saw someone who needed help. He turned back to the audience. That's the kind of leadership the world needs more of. The kind that shows up wet, uninvited, and still refuses to be small. He gestured to Aaliyah. And today, I officially name her as one of the youngest members ever inducted into the Blake Legacy Circle. The room erupted. As she rose to accept the honor, Aaliyah saw Natalie clapping, Daniel nodding, and her mother, front row, tears streaming, pressing her hands to her chest. Aaliyah took the mic. She paused. Let the quiet settle. Then, in the same voice she once used to calm a child under rain, "Thank you for opening the door. But more than that, thank you for letting me hold it open for someone else." Later that night, long after the ceremony, after the handshakes and applause, Aaliyah walked alone back through Midtown. It was raining again. But she didn't run for cover. She walked straight through it. Because now, when it rained, she didn't think of being late. She thought of beginnings. Today's story wasn't just about a poor girl stepping into the world of finance. It was about how kindness is never out of place, and how character can open doors that degrees never will. If you believe that everyone deserves to be seen for who they are, if you've ever felt like you weren't qualified enough in a world full of expectations, then remember what Aaliyah Brooks said. You don't need to fit in, you just need to show up, whole. Leave a comment if this story touched your heart. And if you'd like to keep walking with us through more healing, human stories, please hit that subscribe button. Your one click means the world to this small channel and helps us keep sharing the good. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next story.